Robert is back in South Africa, where he's living now. At the beginning of the year, he went to Tel Aviv for what he told me. He's like, I'm just going to be gone for a few days. I have to sign some documents or something. Okay, whatever. And then a little war broke out, and he was stuck there until now. They finally got flights out.
Let's just say it was interesting. Really, from a personal level, the biggest battle that you have is trying to reschedule flights that are being canceled, and you wind up paying airlines a couple $1,000s that you didn't intend, and then you wait for refunds.
Today, Robert goes to Israel for 5 days, gets stuck there for 6 weeks, defining why the world is crazy today, wondering if the U.S. is leaving NATO, and looking ahead to the weeks to come. Plus our usual predictive nonsense. Stick around. Hello, Robert. Hello, everybody. It's been a while.
Okay, the last time I saw you, Harry Truman was president, I think.
Last time you saw me, my hair was still dark. Last time I saw
My.
you, we were at peace.
Isn't it wonderful? I can't imagine what it
That's a
feels
great-
like to be stuck in the Middle East for a month and a half or whatever.
Robert is back in South Africa, where he's living now. He went to at the beginning of the year, he went to Tel Aviv for what he told me. He's like, I'm just going to be gone for a few days. I have to sign some documents or something. Okay, whatever. And then a little war broke out, and he was stuck there until now. They finally got flights out.
Let's just say it was interesting. And really, from a personal level, the biggest battle that you have is trying to reschedule flights that are being canceled 20 minutes later, and you wind up paying airlines a couple $1,000s that you didn't intend, and then you wait for refunds that they insist you will get in 15 to 20 business days, and they collect the float. Now, I'm not talking about Israeli airlines, I'm talking about other airlines. Actually, the services on the airlines that I took were quite good. Everyone was friendly. The problem was that they, just like everyone else, were vulnerable and had to cancel flights, and they don't know schedules, and they had to deal with the missiles and other interesting details that, well, let's just say it was a war situation.
How long were you there for altogether? Was it like
I
2
was
months?
I was there from the end of February, basically, around the last week of February. Thought I'd be back on the first week of March. Wound up coming back here to the Western Cape the first week of April. Been dealing with some issues too, Mr. Summer.
Well, yeah, for me, my wife and I were out of town half of 2026 practically. Yeah,
So I have a question
results are
for you.
emotional. Yeah.
What the hell is going on in the world? Do you want to
Well,
answer
that's
that? I think I actually have come up with an answer.
okay. Let's hear it.
No. I want to hear your viewpoint. Do you have any idea what's
Uh,
going on?
well, since we last broadcast one of these things, the end of last year, we've had little excursions and adventures, but it's been one thing after another. And now, we have a president who's threatening Cuba next. There's no point to any of this at all.
Well, I think there's a
By his
point.
own points that he's making are things that he said last year. Like, for instance, with Iran, he said they wiped out all their nuclear stuff. But here we are again, I guess, for the same reason. I don't know if there was something imminent, but if there was, we need to hear it. We need to know why we're doing all this. So because nature abhors a vacuum and there's not enough information as to why these things are happening in the world today, the speculation comes in to fill the vacuum. I'm just saying that's what's filling the vacuum. So he needs to be better about communicating
Okay.
why we're doing this, why this,
Yep.
why now.
Wait. In January, what happened in Iran?
There are a lot of people demonstrating in the streets, but that happens off and on all the time.
Yeah,
And then they
but
quell it.
35,000 people were killed in 1 week.
You think that's why he's doing this now as a humanitarian effort? You really
I
think
think that's part
his
of it,
MO?
and I wish they would have said something to that effect, that you're trying to
Yeah.
help the people of Iran. I mean, they have spoken about regime change. But let me go into this. Let me go into this a little.
Right.
I
Right.
think they have basically wiped out the clerical leadership in Iran in many facets. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard troops now, or corps as they're known, the IRGC, terrible with acronyms, is and looks like they're fully in charge at this point. They are a mafia. They make money off of the oil that they basically don't share with the public. Now, whether that's a reason to go in and start bombing someone, that can be argued, and you have a strong case that it's not a good enough argument. But fact is that if they had argued that 35,000 people were killed in January, and we're trying to help those people and trying to create a change of leadership there, and we're trying to take down a terrorist state, as you said, it could have been communicated better. I think at this point, to answer my question about what the hell's going on, I think there's an economic war now being fought with Iran more than a military. I mean, certainly we have all the weapons in place there pointed at Iran. Iran claims to have reloaded and is ready to launch missiles at the countries in the Middle East, including Israel, the UAE, Saudi, and any other places that they sent missiles at. But I think we have an economic war now. And I think to that point, if you connect the dots, you see that crude oil futures are above $100 again. The spot price is above $100. That hurts China. China is not getting their oil efficiently from Iran right now. That's creating a squeeze. But here's the big thing that a lot of people missed, and maybe you've seen this. Yesterday, the United Arab Emirates left OPEC. And I guarantee you 100% that this had something to do with what's going on in the Middle East and the UAE starting to lean into a more public stance in which they are basically saying we want to align with certain nations outside of the Middle East and become a global nation for business, basically, a little like Singapore. Now, I'm not saying the UAE is running the war, mind you. I think it's the United States. Israel's certainly helping the US with that. But I think we're seeing an economic war. Like you, though, I think it's been poorly communicated. It's been poorly communicated by Trump, by his White House in many respects, as to the exact reasons why we're going in. But is any of this stuff ever clear? Is it ever clear? It's the fog of war. Having said that, equities
Well,
are at all-time highs, although as of today and yesterday, they're down a little bit in the NASDAQ and S&P. We have no idea what's going on. The financial markets are a little crazed. Forex is crazed. Gold is down. The safe haven is down to like $4,500. Bitcoin is up.
let me ask you a question. If this continues on, let's say oil hits $200 a barrel instead of
It's not going to
110.
hit $200. There's too much supply in the world. Venezuela. Oh, then you've got a problem.
Venezuela, that's very heavy crude. You need to unload new refineries.
Refine it.
Yeah, we
True.
don't have.
True.
I'm looking down at. We have one that's closing in California here. I'm staring at it down the hill right now. It's near Long Beach. But they were in the process of shutting these things down over the last 3 years, and it's like it takes a long time to get them up online. I could see oil hitting $200 a barrel in the next 3 months. So
Not
if that
possible.
happens, what happens to our economy?
It goes into the shitter,
Or the
but it's
global
not going up to 200. It's not going
Yeah.
up to $200. It might go up to 115, 120. We've been there before. And, from everything I've heard, the price of gasoline, while it's gone up, it's still not as expensive as it was a few years ago in many
You
states.
mean at the height of the pandemic in California? I remember it had hit $5, and now it's higher than that in California. And in the rest of the country, it's above $4.
Do you realize that in the United States, you pay a cheaper cost for your petrol than most people around the world? Americans complain about the price of oil, the price of their gasoline, but people in Europe have been paying higher prices for 40 years around the world.
Tell that to the voters who are like trying to make ends meet. And
You bring up something that's interesting, something that bothered me about a week and a half ago regarding why I thought Trump was hesitating on talking about why and how and what's going to happen now, and that is the midterm elections. And you and I briefly touched upon this last week during a short
Yeah.
conversation. I think a lot of the problem and the miscommunication of this whole entire saga in the States to the public is because people are worried about what's going to happen in the midterm elections. I think the Republicans are nervous now. They don't have good polling numbers in a lot of places where they had been ahead for quite a while, but the Democrats too.
Yeah, I mean, if the midterms were held today, it would be blue bloodbath. There's a lot of anger over here about prices, broken promises, things like that. Um, and so the Republicans are in office are starting to feel it. Another interesting monkey wrench to midterms could very well be all of the people in Trump's cabinet that he's getting rid of. So far, there's been three or four. Speculation is pretty rife that there's a couple more people who might be on the chopping block next. So the problem with that is you have the midterms coming up in November. People tend to make up their minds by October, and the Senate has to vote all those replacements in, right? So if they look like the Keystone Cops as it gets closer and closer, trying to refill these positions, that's another warning sign for Republicans. It'll be an interesting cycle.
Great. And I think that's causing some of the problems in terms of the communication. I mean, they don't want to talk about outlook. They don't want to talk about goals or targets. They certainly don't want to have soldiers come back in body bags, to put it bluntly. They don't want wounded soldiers coming back.
Right.
And Republicans are just as nervous about that as Democrats can play to their constituents and say, it's an endless war. It's something that we didn't get a chance to vote on. We don't really understand why it's happening. We can talk about all the conspiracies. We can say that Israel has led the U.S. into this war, which I don't believe for an instant. And we can talk about the fact that Trump is just getting his revenge on Iran, which I don't believe is true. I think they should have come out, and as I said before already, I think they should have communicated that this was something that was triggered by the protests turning so violent in January and just being tired of dealing with all the illness that the Iranian regime and the IRGC basically lends itself to with terrorist groups around the world. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, drug cartels around the world are deeply involved with Iranian IRGC components. It's a known thing, it can be proven. Iran funds itself through, now this is interesting, a lot through the cryptocurrency world, and that makes me nervous. And that is a shadow against some of what Trump is doing too, and why I thought for a while was nervous that he wouldn't go after some of the financial aspects with the Iranians because these currency exchanges handle a lot of money digitally for the Iranians because they can't handle US dollars. And that's why I come back to the economic war. And in the last
Right.
couple of weeks, the US has gone after some of these cryptocurrency exchanges that they know or believe, at least allege, were dealing with the Iranians. It needs to be communicated better.
The Risk Reward Show is a weekly podcast covering current events in worldwide business. Headquartered in Los Angeles and Tel Aviv, with partners in London, New York, Chicago, Shanghai, Mumbai, and Cape Town, we source opinions and news directly from where they're happening and then pass them along to you. Look for us wherever you get your podcast fix.
Let's shift gears here. Let's go to my favorite mayor in the United States, Mr. Mamdani in New York. Did you see his press conference yesterday saying that New York is going to fall $3.5 to $4 billion short for their budget?
No, I didn't see that. The talk around here in Los Angeles is similar in that we have a budget shortfall, partly coming out of fires from last year and a bunch of other stuff, legal stuff. And so now we're not hiring as many police officers as we need, or fire officials, firemen, firefighters. Sorry. So it's a similar conversation going on over here.
I don't think your politicians or our politicians or their politicians or anyone else's politicians pay attention to anything else but their own needs when they get into office. They put on a good show. But back to Mr. Mamdani and his socialist platform, where he wanted to give everything away for free, essentially, he is now running into this little thing called reality in terms of money. And he basically, while not threatening the state of New York, is saying that New York has to help the city more with funds. And his agenda is probably going to go up in smoke and or become a miserable failure. He might get reelected next term. People might still be willing to give him a chance, but little by little, cracks are appearing in the armor very quickly in New York City. I find that rather amusing, and you get what you deserve. That's my only message to it. It's here's the thought for you.
And predictable.
Yeah, predictable is a good word. But my thought is this: believing in socialism as an adult is a little like believing in Santa Claus as a kid. At some point, you
Yeah.
have to wake up and understand that Santa doesn't exist. Socialism doesn't really exist in its
What?
utopian state.
What?
Things turn to shit.
Well, it's basic psychology. People want to, especially in hard times, and for some people, this is hard economic times. And when you're already struggling, you're not going to want to pay more so that you can share stuff with other people. You want to be able to cover the people in your immediate family, your immediate friend group, and you're not going to be giving stuff away. It's just how it works. That's how we're wired. And I know there's a lot of kind, good-hearted people who believe that it could be otherwise because they personally feel that they would share. That's fine, but you're not speaking for 80% of any population in the world ever.
Well, eventually, you run out of the ability to spend other people's money with socialism, as Margaret Thatcher basically put it. I'm paraphrasing her. It's great. Everyone wants to have the best of social services, the best highways, the best stadiums, the best libraries, the best public transportation. But these things cost money, and you had better plan for them correctly. Why can't we all just be Singapore?
Yeah, I agree. Have you been to Singapore? I have a couple times. That is one well-oiled machine, man. And it's beautiful, it's clean, it's all those things you hear, well run.
I think that it is as nice as everybody says it is, and I give it a lot of credit. The leadership there has been phenomenal for decades, starting with the original leadership there. Having said that, there is one thing that Singapore has on its side. It's a smaller nation, and it's easier to manage a smaller nation than it is a nation that has 350 million people or 1.5 billion people, talking about India.
Yeah.
Things get a little more difficult when you're dealing with states, federal systems, administrative branches that you really can't have transparency with. Singapore has that advantage, and it helps them. But again, it's a model for everybody, I think. So I have a question for you. Have you ever found a piece of food in your sofa that you know has been laying there for months? And have you ever eaten that piece of food?
No, I can say with 100% certainty. I have never eaten something that's been sitting inside a sofa for a week or 2 or 3 months. Why?
Okay.
What
I'm
did you
asking
do?
this. This is a guy's question, and I think you're going to change your answer after I tell you what happened. I'm sitting on a sofa, and I realize that there's a jelly bean next to me. And I realize I have not had jelly beans in a few weeks, and it's kind of in the crevice of the sofa. Jelly bean isn't chocolate. It doesn't melt. The temperature was fine. Its shell was okay. I didn't see any insect eggs on it. So I decided that my jelly bean was safe to eat. I consumed it, and there were no problems. Maybe that is the answer to hunger in our world.
Jelly beans in sofa cushions. Okay, I'll give you that. If there were a jelly bean and I wasn't sure how old it was, but it was under a month, knowing how jelly beans are, they have a hard shell, they don't attract a lot of debris sticks to them. They're not like a circus peanut or something more porous. They're not ice.
Piece of popcorn that could have
Yeah, you
blown
need
up someplace.
a quick wipe, and I would do that. I would, if that were a challenge presented to me, I would accept that challenge. Well, I have a question for you. What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten in your life, other than that jelly bean?
For me, I guess it might be snake that I've had in China, but it was actually quite delicious. And it didn't seem weird to me at all when I was there. But when I tell people that I had snake, that they brought it to the table alive and cut it up, and that we picked up the pieces and put it in
That's a good
oil
one.
and then put it on rice and poured a little sauce on it, when I tell them the details of that, I am given askance looks. Yet, for me, it was quite delicious. I enjoyed it, and I would have it again.
I like that they served it to you alive and then prepared it.
Well, they
That's a good one.
killed it in front of me.
Okay, that's very
They bring it to your table, demonstrate that it's alive, that it's
right.
fresh,
Okay.
and then they cut it up and we ate it.
Okay. For
It
me,
was good.
did it taste like chicken?
It tasted like a combination of red and white meat. Tasted quite okay. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Okay.
Have you ever had eel?
Oh yeah, many times. I worked in a sushi restaurant. Was it like that? It tasted kind of. I could see it tasted being in sort of similar to that.
I've had horse in northern Italy in a stew with
Oh,
polenta,
okay.
which they eat in Verona, and it's actually quite good.
The weirdest thing for me was also in China. I've eaten a lot of interesting dishes in China, we'll say. But
Mhm.
the one that I wouldn't eat again is actually considered a delicacy. It was in the north in Shenyang. I went to a wedding there, and Shenyang is a large city that's right kind of near the border of North, way up there. So they had me sit because I was like the only white guy in the city at that moment. There's not a lot of tourist travel in Shenyang.
Mm.
And so they had me sit with the government guys. And so they were eating a big round table, of course, and it was local government guys. And so
Mhm.
they always give them the best food as you know, for a lot of reasons. And one of the things was this delicacy that I've never tried before and don't intend to since, which was boiled silkworm. And the way they do this is they take the silks, which are big, they're like that big, okay? And the worm is inside, still alive, and they take that whole thing and they boil it. And so the outer silk shell becomes a hard shell, and you have to bite into it. And the worm inside gets boiled alive. But the problem is you bite into this thing and the texture on the outside is almost crunchy. It's like sort of al dente crunchy. And then it's gooey and green and salty on the inside. And they're big. They're like that big. It tastes like snot, you know, and it looks like it. But it's considered a delicacy. So I had trouble with that one. Everything else that's been put in front of me anywhere, no problem. That's the only time that I had a little bit of a gag reflex.
What's funny, and people know it about me, I'm not a big fan of hard-boiled eggs. I mean, talking about normal food and things that you don't like, there are a couple things that it's just the aesthetic of a hard-boiled egg that I'm not a fan of. I can eat them, and when they're cut in half, put a little paprika on it, no problem. But I'd much rather have eel or snake. So
Interesting.
I don't know what that says
Now,
about
what
me.
about snake eggs? Snakes lay eggs. Eat a snake egg.
This is weird. Some snakes lay eggs, other snakes do not. They just
Right.
give
Some that they're
birth
live
to
birth.
little
You're right.
snakes.
Forgot about that. Snakes are weird.
Let me tell you,
Uh,
they have cobras in South Africa. They have a Western Cape cobra, to be exact. And I had a dream a couple nights ago that I was being chased by a cobra. So, what else is going on in the world that you would like to discuss?
I think we're going to have a lot of predictions coming up. That's my prediction. We'll have predictions. We also have, we're in the NBA playoffs right now. My prediction, though, is Thunder goes all the way and wins. How about you?
I'm going to pick the Spurs. And my
Wembanyama.
favorite wannabe son, Victor Wembanyama. I was a little concerned when he fell on his face a couple nights ago, but
Bad.
he's healed. He's okay. He's a smart kid. He's athletic. He plays ferociously too. And here's the deal. I think if Jalen Williams on Oklahoma is not 100%, I think the Spurs have a chance to beat the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals and advance and win. That's what's going on.
Okay.
The Spurs eliminated Portland last night. Denny Avila for Portland played very well, made himself known throughout the world by the way he played, did terrifically. Portland has a good young team, but I really like the Spurs. They're extremely young. They're, I think, much more inexperienced in terms of playoffs than the Thunder, but their team. I like Castle. I like Fox. They have this kid Harper, Vassell.
Yeah.
They're talented, and Wembenyama I think is a difference maker. I think he reminds me of when we were kids, of this little fellow. You might remember him. I think he played on one of your teams called Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought he was. Wait, I thought he was a pilot for airlines.
By the way, I just as an aside, Jabbar, have you ever read any of his critiques on jazz?
No.
Writes extremely well, and he loves music. I mean, he really loves music.
I've always been a fan of Bar. That was the
Yeah,
Lake
he
Show
seems
in the '80s was fun to watch.
you know, the easy pick in a way is the New York Knicks. But you know what would be very funny is if the Orlando Magic, who played poorly all year, they had no chemistry because they've had several players in and out. Wagner was out most of the year with injuries. He wasn't able to play with Banchero. But now suddenly they're playing well and they're beating the Pistons, who have a good young team. It would be funny as hell to see the Magic make the finals and really make everyone quite chagrined with that because they played lousy all year. They underperformed. And suddenly they're about to win a
Yeah,
playoff series that no one expected. But I'll
that
pick the
makes
Spurs against the Knicks, but don't take that to the bank, folks. I suspect that I could be wrong and probably will be. I have one for you that's a little more politically bent. Is the U.S. going to leave NATO, or are they going to actually change things up in a major way? Are they going to say after, and I say this, and you can argue it all you want, after being negated by the UK, France, Germany in many respects regarding what's going on in the Middle East with Iran, should the US just walk away and tell them, take care of yourselves? We're going to form other alliances. We're going to form an alliance with, I don't know, Poland, the Czech Republic, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Hungary, Romania, and just say to Germany, France, and England, you're on your own. Fine.
Why would
You
we
don't
do
want to
that?
do anything?
Why would we do that? All the
Why
countries we
shouldn't
just
they?
mentioned have much weaker defensives than the rest of standard NATO, including our allies, UK, France, Germany.
What do they get? What do they give the U.S. at this point? What good does the U.S. get from being in
What
NATO
do
at
they
this
give the
point?
U.S.? Well, for one thing, Article 5 in NATO, as you know, is if one of the 30 NATO countries, 31, I don't know, if one of the 30 countries is attacked, all the others will attack back on its behalf along with it. So
Good.
it's a
So
deterrent.
why aren't they helping? Why aren't they helping in the Hormuz Strait with oil, which is a
Because
strategic
Article 5 says
interest?
if that country was attacked, was America attacked? No. America's the one that aggressively attacked another country. Again, we talked about this. We don't know what all the
Yes,
reasons were.
I
They've done a
understand
better
you. I
job of
agree with
selling it, and maybe, but the other NATO countries don't have any obligation whatsoever to help us out. If anything, it's pissed
Okay,
them
but
off that
so
it's making it.
what does the U.S. gain from being in NATO at this point? It's
It's a
just a
deterrent.
money
It's a
deterrent for
deterrent.
what?
If
To
China or
what?
Russia or any other bad actor wants to, or any other group of bad actors, if China wants to team up with Iran and North Korea and Russia and attack the U.S., saying, haha, now we've got you, you can't beat us, we're nuclear armed, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to do that knowing that all the rest of the peer countries that are in terms of superpowers or semi powers like France and Germany and UK, they're not going to do that because we've got them covered in all over the world. We're allies in NATO with Canada and Australia and Japan and places. Those are the AUKUS countries, of course. But in NATO, for the European theater, it keeps all of Putin's like desires to go reform the Soviet Union or whatever the hell he's trying to do. It keeps him at bay, relatively
Does
speaking,
it keep him
because
at bay? Does it
yeah,
keep him, relatively
him at
speaking?
bay because Ukraine isn't a member of NATO. If Ukraine was a member of NATO, if they had been, he would have never attacked them. In fact, that's why he said he was attacking them because he doesn't want them being a member of NATO. NATO has kept the peace for almost 90 years.
Your answer is no, the U.S. will not leave NATO?
My answer is correct. No, because look, Trump can try and do that with an executive order if he wants to, but that's got to be an act of Congress.
No,
That's a congressional,
I
purview.
agree with
It's
you.
yeah. So there, if he tries to do that and
So you,
says that sign some executive order or some BS like he does, then that might be the final straw that gets them to finally impeach him or Article 25 is at. People aren't gonna leave NATO. I can't see it. Now we're damaging NATO. We're doing that already. We're doing a great job of that. We got a lot of our allies who are now teaming up with, they're trying to find other trading partners because these stupid tariffs and whatnot with people that aren't going to be as, who will be more friendly to them. Our friendliness to our allies, which is pretty much most of the world, the free world, kept China from getting too overbearing with its designs. And now there's a bunch of them in China right now negotiating with China for better trade.
I hear what you're saying. I actually agree with you. I don't think the U.S. will leave NATO for
Yeah.
a lot of the reasons you said.
It's a good question because it's being discussed right now. So, something we got to be aware of.
Okay.
All content on the Risk Reward Show is for entertainment purposes only and not to be construed as financial advice. The hosts are idiots. They don't know what they're doing. They just walked in from the street. It wasn't even Wall Street. Investments involve risk, so please consult a qualified professional before making decisions.
Here's my next question for you, and then I'll let you go with a question. If midterm election results come in on the first week of November, who's going to be in control of Congress?
I do still think there's going to be a blue wave of some sort. I think, as we saw in 2018, I think that the House will flip, and I think that it's very possible that the Senate will flip to Democrat as well. And when that happens, look out.
Yeah, I think the Democrats will take the House of Representatives, which happens a lot during midterm elections, that things flip. People kind of go the other way. I think the Republicans will probably keep the Senate. Having said that, I will put my opinion out there and say I think it's okay for states to be able to ask for identification before people vote to prove they're a U.S. citizen. I think only
I agree
U.S.
with that.
citizens should be allowed to vote.
I agree with that. I think that that's sort of the custom anyway. I always have to show my ID when I vote in California.
Okay.
I assume that's the custom in most states. But here's the thing. They've done a lot of studies on this and looked very closely at it over the last 10 years. There's very little in terms of people voting twice or voting when they're not supposed to vote or not allowed to vote. A lot of that just isn't, that's overblown. It just doesn't happen as often as.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's probably overblown, but having lived in Chicago for many years, which is a democratically controlled city, that will never change. The Republicans likely, never's a big word. The Republicans will take decades before they ever get someone elected in there that's controlling that city again. There are many Democrats in Chicago who are quite conservative, who would be Republicans anyplace else. And it's always been speculated within the city. I'm not talking about federal elections now, that there are shenanigans that go on in Chicago elections, famously. And I don't know if that still goes on, but there are big city elections where the results are always a little bit askew and people raise eyebrows, and that's fairly famous. I'm not talking about federal elections now. I'm not going into that. I'm just talking about city elections that have had results that people question and can laugh at. Because if you don't live in the city most of the time, you just don't care. But I will say that it is well known that the election between Kennedy and Nixon in the state of Illinois was basically won by Illinois because Mayor Daley helped turn out a lot of votes that did not exist for Kennedy. And that has not only been alleged, but it's pretty much been proven that
I've heard
that
that
took
actually.
place.
Yeah, that was a different era, of course.
Yeah.
There weren't as many ways to prove this, that, or the other thing. And Chicago was coming out of course, the Capone era that from 2 decades before that, and they already had certain systems in place that weren't very kosher compared to how they are today. So I don't doubt that. But I think today
Yeah.
it just doesn't happen as often as you think it does. They've done studies. I can't
Oh,
point to one.
yeah. But the voter ID, I find fascinating that some people insist that people should be able to go up and just say, well, I'm Joe Schmo and I'm, at such and such address and I'm here to
Yeah,
vote and not
I
be
agree
able to
with you.
show ID.
That shouldn't be the case, because if that is the case anywhere, then that's people can exploit that.
Okay. Gold is at $4,540 per ounce right now.
Yep.
At one point, what was it, in the end of January or so? Where was gold well over 5,000, as we know, it was about 5,500 or so. Where's gold going to be the end of May now that it has gone down significantly in a way?
Yeah, it's a good question. Just because this war is continuing, I think once things settle down, and if we're no longer at war, I think gold goes down.
But on the 27th of February, gold was at 5,184. It's at 4,040.
I
Gold
understand that. Yeah, I get that.
at the end of
I get that.
January, gold at the end of January was 5,000, almost 5,600 at its peak. So the question, where is it at the end of May? Where do you think? I mean,
Well, but
it's a
there's
guess
other
and not
factors. I think part of that is that people thought this was going to be
speculation.
sort of a
A lot
warm
of
up, or like speculation of like, well, we'll get out of there fast or whatever. But if it does start creeping up barrels at $200 or whatever, right? Like we were talking about
oh,
before,
come on.
whether that happens or not, if there's a sentiment that this is going to lead to something that's a little more precarious for the economy, I think gold goes up. Okay, but I'll play it safe.
Give
I'll say
me
I think it'll be at 4,800.
okay. That's not much of a change,
Not much of a change.
Mr. Doom.
Yeah, well, that's
Wait,
because there's a lot of different things at play here. Maybe I'm being
okay, okay,
less doom and gloom
fine,
just
fine.
because I'm assuming we'll somehow find a way to get out of that damn place.
Let's make it a two-part question. What's the price of future markets, the forward future market, going to be for WTI crude around the end of May?
Mm.
Is it going to be $200, Scott?
By the end of May, no. I was saying further into the future, if this continues on, it could be, especially if they keep blocking the
Okay.
Strait of Hormuz. I'll say by the end of May, I'll say it'll be 115. I don't think it's going to jump up too much, but I don't see it going down. How about you?
Well, I don't think it's going to go down too much because I think the economic war that I feel has become the focal point in the Middle East at this point against Iran is definitely in play. I'll agree. I'll say it's going to be around 115, 118 by the end of May. I don't think it's going to go too much higher than that, though. I really don't. I think there's a lot of supply in the world, and I think that's going to surprise people. When the Strait of Hormuz opens, I think crude oil will go back down to $65 a barrel.
The Report Show is a co-production of Angry Metatraders and Leitmotiv Press. It's produced by Scott Summer and Robert Petrucci, and engineered by Scott Summer and Sagini Reed. Music is by All Good Folks, a group of composers based in London. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts, as we're everywhere, like the gods we are.